In February 2025, former President Donald Trump shocked the world with a bold accusation that sent shockwaves through both political and financial circles. Standing before a crowd of reporters, Trump made headlines with a claim that immediately dominated the news cycle and left many scrambling for answers. Canada, he claimed, bans U.S. banks from doing business there. This statement, delivered with characteristic bravado, suggested a major rift between two of the world's closest trading partners. The idea that American financial institutions were being locked out of the Canadian market was not only surprising, but also deeply concerning for investors and policymakers alike. Trump linked his accusation to a recent $2 billion Canadian bond deal, alleging that American banks were unfairly excluded from participating. According to Trump, this was not just a one-off incident, but evidence of a broader pattern of discrimination against U.S. financial interests. The implication was clear. Canada was playing favorites, and American businesses were paying the price. Trump didn't stop at accusations. He escalated the situation by threatening a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian goods entering the United States. This was a dramatic move, one that risked igniting a full-blown trade war between the two nations. The threat was not just rhetoric, it was a signal that the U.S. was prepared to use its economic might to force Canada's hand. In addition, Trump proposed an extra 10% tariff, specifically targeting Canadian energy exports: oil, natural gas, and electricity. These resources are vital to both economies, and any disruption could have far-reaching consequences for consumers and industries on both sides of the border. These threats rattled businesses and governments, reviving memories of past trade disputes like those seen during the NAFTA renegotiations. Boardrooms buzzed with urgent meetings, and government officials scrambled to assess the potential fallout. The specter of tariffs and economic retaliation loomed large, casting uncertainty over cross-border commerce. What made this episode especially unusual was Trump's focus on banking. The claim that Canada outright bans U.S. banks was unprecedented and demanded urgent scrutiny from regulators, trade experts, and the media. Was this a misunderstanding, a misrepresentation, or a genuine policy dispute? Amid mounting pressure, Trump later announced a 30-day delay on the tariffs, hinting at possible negotiations between the two countries. This pause offered a glimmer of hope for a diplomatic solution, but the anxiety in the business community and among ordinary citizens lingered. The threat of tariffs still hung over the relationship like a dark cloud. The financial markets, built on trust and predictability, now faced a major political risk. Investors watched nervously as stock prices fluctuated, and analysts warned of potential long-term damage to North American economic stability. This episode set the stage for a critical fact-check, forcing officials and journalists to dig deep into the real relationship between U.S. banks and Canada. Investigations were launched, press conferences were held, and experts were called upon to clarify the facts behind Trump's explosive claim. The world watched as the stability of North American trade hung in the balance. Allies and rivals alike paid close attention, knowing that the outcome could reshape economic alliances and set new precedents for international trade disputes. The question remained, was there any truth to Trump's explosive claim, or was this another chapter in the ongoing saga of U.S.-Canada relations? The answer would have far-reaching implications for both countries and for the future of global trade. Canada responded swiftly and decisively. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau publicly declared Trump's claims entirely false, emphasizing that American banks are thriving in Canada. Trudeau cited hard data: U.S. banks in Canada hold over $113 billion in assets, a clear sign of their deep presence. He framed the misinformation as a political tactic, not a legitimate grievance. The Canadian government's rapid, fact-based rebuttal calmed markets and reassured investors. International media quickly picked up the story, reinforcing the reality of a stable, open Canadian financial system. The episode underscored the importance of transparency and truth in cross-border relations. Canada's response was a masterclass in crisis communication. The facts are clear. U.S. banks are not just present in Canada. They are thriving, expanding, and deeply woven into the fabric of the Canadian financial system. Their influence is visible in every major city, and their impact is felt by businesses and individuals alike. U.S. banks have a robust, long-standing presence in Canada, with branches and subsidiaries operating in key financial hubs from coast to coast. 16 U.S.-based bank subsidiaries and branches, including giants like JPMorgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citigroup, operate actively across the country. These institutions are not just names on buildings, they are active participants in the Canadian economy, providing essential services to millions. Collectively, they manage an impressive $113 billion in Canadian assets, accounting for half of all foreign bank assets in Canada. This level of investment demonstrates their commitment and the trust placed in them by Canadian clients. Far from being excluded, U.S. banks are dominant players in the foreign banking sector. Their reach extends into corporate lending, investment banking, and retail services, making them indispensable partners for Canadian businesses and consumers. Their roots run deep. JPMorgan Chase, for example, has operated in Canada for nearly a century, adapting and growing alongside the Canadian economy through decades of change and innovation. These banks employ hundreds of Canadians, offer a full suite of financial services, and are integral to Canada's financial landscape. Their teams support everything from small business loans to large-scale infrastructure projects. They serve both Canadian and international clients, facilitating cross-border trade and investment. Their expertise helps Canadian companies expand abroad and brings global opportunities to local markets. The reality is clear. U.S. banks are not just allowed in Canada, they are essential to the country's financial system, contributing to stability, innovation, and growth. The narrative of exclusion simply doesn't hold up. In fact, the partnership between U.S. and Canadian banks is a cornerstone of North American economic strength. The evidence is overwhelming and public, found in financial statements, government reports, and the daily operations of these banks across Canada. To understand why the ban claim is false, look at Canada's banking laws. The Bank Act, modernized in 1991, sets clear rules for foreign banks to operate in Canada. Oversight comes from the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, OSFI, ensuring stability and fairness. The system is transparent, predictable, and applies the same rules to all qualified international banks, including those from the U.S. Canada's approach is about prudent management, not exclusion. Experts note that Canadian regulators have even encouraged U.S. banks to enter the market to boost competition. The presence of 16 major U.S. banks is proof the system is open. Canada's banking framework is built on rules, not politics. The facts speak for themselves. When it comes to foreign banks operating in Canada, there are two main legal structures available: Schedule 2 and Schedule 3. These frameworks are designed to provide clarity and flexibility for international financial institutions looking to establish a presence in the Canadian market. Schedule 2 banks are full Canadian subsidiaries such as JPMorgan Chase Canada. These banks are incorporated under Canadian law and are subject to the same regulatory standards as domestic banks. This means they can offer a complete range of banking services to individuals and businesses, from personal accounts to commercial lending, and are fully integrated into the Canadian financial system. On the other hand, Schedule 3 banks are branches of foreign parent companies like Bank of America. These branches typically focus on specialized services such as corporate lending or investment banking, and face certain restrictions. Most notably, they cannot accept retail deposits under $150,000. This ensures that their activities are more targeted and less focused on everyday consumer banking. This dual system gives foreign banks the flexibility to choose the model that best fits their business strategy, whether they want to operate as a full-service subsidiary or as a specialized branch. Importantly, neither path represents a ban or exclusion. Both are well-defined, transparent options with clear regulatory guidelines and compliance requirements. The process is open and straightforward for those willing to meet Canadian standards. U.S. banks, in particular, have successfully used both models to establish a strong presence in Canada, integrating deeply into the country's financial system and serving a wide range of clients. The rules are clear, the opportunities are real, and the system is designed to encourage participation rather than create barriers. Canada's regulatory approach is built to accommodate foreign banks, ensuring they can operate effectively while maintaining the stability and integrity of the financial sector. The very existence of these two options is strong evidence of Canada's openness to international banking and its commitment to fostering a competitive, diverse financial marketplace. So, when you hear claims of a so-called ban on foreign banks in Canada, remember, the facts tell a very different story. Canada's banking system is renowned for its stability, thanks to strict regulation. OSFI enforces some of the world's toughest capital requirements. Canadian banks must maintain a CET1 ratio of 11.5%, far above international standards. This conservative approach has paid off. No Canadian banks failed during the 2008 global financial crisis, and none have failed since 2001. In contrast, the US saw over 560 bank failures in the same period. Canadian regulators take a proactive, hands-on approach focusing on real risk management. Restrictions on foreign branches, like limits on small retail deposits, are about protecting the system, not excluding US banks. The goal: ensure resilience and safeguard Canadian savings. Canada's rules foster competition while maintaining unmatched stability. The system is open, but prudently managed. That's why US banks thrive here. The controversy didn't stop at banking. Trump also claimed Canada does not accept most US agricultural products. The facts say otherwise. Canada is the third largest market for US agricultural exports, buying nearly $28 billion in 2023. For US fruits, vegetables, and dairy, Canada is a top customer. Trucks filled with American produce cross the border daily, supporting farmers on both sides. The agricultural trade relationship is deep, vital, and mutually beneficial. Claims of Canadian protectionism are simply false. The real story is one of partnership, not exclusion. Dependent experts quickly debunked the claims. Academics like Professor Lawrence Booth confirmed there's no law barring US banks from Canada. In fact, regulators have encouraged their entry. The Canadian Bankers Association highlighted the significant active role of US banks in the country. These voices provided unbiased, fact-based clarity, moving the debate beyond political rhetoric. Their testimony reassured markets and the public, emphasizing the open, competitive nature of Canada's banking sector. Expertise and evidence won out over misinformation. The facts were undeniable. His episode is a lesson in the power of facts over fiction. US banks are not banned. They are thriving in Canada, under clear, fair rules. The threat of tariffs based on falsehoods risks real economic harm to both nations. The US and Canada are deeply integrated partners with billions in trade and millions of jobs at stake. Disputes should be resolved through dialogue, not misinformation. Swift fact-checking by officials and experts prevented a crisis. In global economics, truth is the foundation of stability and trust. The real story is one of partnership, a fact worth defending.